In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to get the average of a text-based rating system in Google Sheets. So let me show you what I mean. So here I have a survey here where the user has selected some options from a drop-down list. So we could change this good here to very good. And you can see that the average rating has now changed to very good. Let's do some fiddling around here. Let's make these poor, and now it's moved down to neutral. So the average between these values is now neutral. We can go poor once again and maybe change this very good down to very poor. And now you can see the average rating has turned down to very poor. So first things first, if you want to play along, there's a link to the starter sheet for this in the description below. Make a copy and you'll have something that's a little like this. Up the top here, we have some closed columns. This allows us to focus on each section of the function as we build it, and basically this is how I build out large functions. So it's a good skill to have. Now, if you don't have time to play along and you just want something quick and convenient, I have already built in a custom function for you here called the average text-based ratings. Now, you can grab this named function in the named functions pack that's available on my website, and it is a growing list of named functions that essentially make your life easier by providing easy at-hand name functions for you to use in your day-to-day work life. A link to the named functions pack is also in the description below. Let's move on with how to build this function. All right, we'll open up our first column here. Now, basically, when you have a drop-down list like this, you can use your data validation to either create an internal reference. So if we go into data here, data validation over here, and we have a look at what's going on. So here I've just built an internal reference here with a drop-down criteria. Another one would be a drop-down from a range where I select this range here, which would be the very poor, poor, neutral, and very good. Either approach is useful. However, for our example, we're going to have a separate location where we're keeping our ratings. For the convenience of this video, I'm going to put it on the one sheet tab, but you could put it on another sheet tab and reference it as well. So what we'll need is a rating from order of lowest to highest. So I've got very poor, poor, neutral, good, and very good. And then I'm going to put a numerical order next to it to the right. All right, so let's build out our next bit. So the first thing we need to do is look up the order of the items here. We need to look up the order of every single item that we have selected here. So let's just change this one to neutral, for example. Give ourselves a bit more variety. We'll make this one poor. Okay, cool. All right, so how do we do that? Well, we can do it a number of ways, but let me introduce you to the VLOOKUP function if you haven't played with it before. So I'm going to use the VLOOKUP or vertical lookup. The VLOOKUP function requires a search key, and the search key for us is going to be this selection cell here. In the end, we want to select each one of these items, but let's just reference the first one so we understand what we're doing with our VLOOKUP. So we've got B2, and then we want to look up our search range. So this is going to be this range here from D2 across to E6. The next parameter is the index, and that's basically what we want to retrieve from our VLOOKUP. Now, we don't want to retrieve the same thing. We don't want the first column retrieved, otherwise we're just showing neutral again. We actually want the order number here. So that's going to be column 1, column 2. So we want column 2 here. So the next thing it asks is whether or not our search column, which is this ratings column here, is sorted. It's not sorted in alphanumeric order here, so we can't say it is. We'll say it is false here, so we'll say false. And then we'll close our VLOOKUP and have a look here. After looking for B2, it has returned neutral, which is 3. So the order point is 3 here. So we could change this to something else. We could say, let's look up B5. I'm going to change that to B5, and that's returned 5. If we want B4 here, this poor, that's going to return, what do we expect, 2 here. So we'll change this B5 to B4, and that returns 2. Cool, that's working well. Let's close this name function here and open this up. And now we want to find a way to capture the order position, the numerical position for each one of these items here. And we can do this with the ARRAYFORMULA function. This function allows us to apply a single cell formula to multiple ranges. So just to be a bit lazy, I'm going to go into this cell here, head up to the formula that we've already created, and hit Control-C to copy and tab out. Don't press Enter, otherwise you're going to end up trying to put in some extra ranges. And now I'm going to type in equals, and then array formula. And inside that array formula, I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste in our VLOOKUP, and then close the brackets. Now we need to do one thing before we finish up this formula, and that's actually put in this entire range here. So let's just change this B4 out and just close that, delete it. And I'll just hide the explanation of the formula. And let's just click and drag this down into the range that we actually want displayed. And now I'm going to hit Tab to get out of the formula. And you can see now that for each one, we've got our order number. So the first one is neutral, it should be 3. Yes, that's 3. The next one's very good, that's 5. The next one is 5, and so on. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and hide column H so we can see what's going on. Now that we have our numbers, we can get the average of these numbers numerically. And I'm just going to drag this over here now that we've got this formula set out so you can see what's going on a bit better. I might just change this overflow to clipped as well. Cool. So the first thing we need to do is get the sum of all these averages. And then we also need to get how many items that we have in our total count and then divide them. So let's just do this first one first. What we're going to do here is basically grab this array formula again. We hit Control C just before the equal sign, hit Control C to copy. And all we need to do here is type in equals and then sum. Then paste in our array formula again, and that's going to give us a total value of 28. Now to get an average, we're going to divide the sum of the values by the total number of items in the list. So our next task is just to get the count of all the items in this list here. Now we're going to do this with, instead of count, we're going to say count A here. So I'll change that here. So count A actually can get values instead of just numerical items. So we'll say equals count A, the number of values in a data set. Yep. Then let's go over here and select this range again and close that off. To get our average result then, it would be a matter of dividing 28 by 7. So it'd be a simple case of going 28 divided by 7, which would give us 4. But we want to combine the two formulas together just in one formula string. So how do we do that? So first we're going to grab this sum. So I'm going to grab the entire thing, including the equal sign here. And I'm going to put this in cell M6 and paste it in. And then we're going to divide that by the count A again. So count A. And that's the total range. So this range over here. We could have copied and pasted it in, but it's a pretty easy formula. We'll hit Tab to get out of that. And that's given us our 4 again. Cool, so our formula's worked well. So you might have guessed the next step, and that is to grab this average value here and then go backwards and define the text rating that's assigned to it. Now, one thing before we do that, what happens if we change one of our values here? So I'm going to change this very good to say neutral, and let's head over here. Now we've got a decimal value here. If we look at our rating scale, we've got our ratings here. Our order is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That might cause us some problems. So it might be a good idea for us to round this value. We can do that with the round function. So we'll say round and put the whole formula here inside our round functions with curved braces. Cool. So now that still gives us 4. So now that we have that, let's hide this column J and open up this next column here to see what's going on. So what's our next task now that we have this larger formula here? So we need to get the text rating from the number here. And let's just find the simple text rating first, just so you understand what's going on. One problem with VLOOKUP is that we can't VLOOKUP backwards. There's a couple of hacks of finding VLOOKUP backwards with index and match. You can recreate the array as well as another hack, but there is the new at the time of publishing this video, Google Sheets function called the XLOOKUP function here that will be able to solve this problem for us easily. So let's go ahead and use it because it's a pretty fun function. All right, so we'll say equals here and we'll go XLOOKUP this time. Okay. XLOOKUP allows us to look up sort of anything from a column to rows. It can look backwards. It's fantastic. And by rights, we could actually replace this VLOOKUP with XLOOKUP in the first lookup phase as well. But it's always handy to know a couple of different ways of doing it. Let's start again. So what's our XLOOKUP asking us to do? Let's open this up. It's asking us again for a search key. So this time round, let's just make our search key this item here, just to make things a bit easier for us to understand the XLOOKUP. And then it's going to be our lookup range, which is going to be this. Instead of selecting the entire range here, we just want this lookup range here, because remember, we have a number and we want to look up the number in our little list here. And then it's going to ask us for the result range, the range we want to display, and that's going to be this section here. Okay, we don't really need to do much else and complete any of the other optional items. We're just going to close this bracket here and hit tab. So now this item 4 has returned good. So the average of all these values here has returned good, which is exactly what we've done here with our named function. So we know it's working well. Okay, the final thing we need to do, instead of having two separate formulas here, we're going to merge this formula into this formula fairly easily. What we're going to do is go in here, grab our original rounded average number here and hit Control-C to copy, tab out, and I'm just going to hide this to make life a little bit easier for us. Hide the column, and let's expand our last little column here. We know it's going to be a doozy, and I'm just going to put this formula down in here for now. So I'm going to hit Control-V. It'll just stay as a text because we didn't take the equal sign. And then I'm going to grab our XLOOKUP here, hit Control-C to copy, tab it over, Control-V to paste. And then we need to replace this search value here, so search key value, with our average values here. So I'm going to hit Control-C for our round, go back up in here and paste it in where our M6 is. Control-V, paste. Cool. Now we don't need this anymore. Hit delete. And we're going to go ahead and hide this as well, so we can see what's going on. We can have a bit of a play. Okay, so let's go ahead and make some changes and do some testing. So we've got neutral here, so let's drop this down to neutral. Cool, that's about right. Let's change this to very poor again, very poor again. Oh, we're getting worse, And there we go, very poor. It hits very poor at this stage, and very poor. Nice. Let's grab everything back to neutral. I'm going to drag this up a little bit, and that should take us back up to poor, somewhere in between. Nice. What happens if we change this one to neutral? What about this one to neutral again? Yep, we moved up to neutral. Good. Drag good down a fair bit, and now we're up to good. This is more dominant of the selections here. So yeah, our average text-based rating system is working well. I hope you had success with the template sheet for yourselves, so you've got your own copy of this formula. And if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, please subscribe. Until next time.